Hello and welcome to the Indie Beginning Podcast. Today's episode is fueled by coffee from Burial Grounds Coffee Company. Right now I am sipping a mug of murder and mischief, and it is delicious with hints of hazelnut and chocolate. Order some beans for yourself at burialgrounds.coffee. Last week our host Marie read her own indie novel, A Charming Nightmare, and today we will discuss some comments left about the story, as well as my top 2 indie author editing dilemmas. If you haven't read the book or missed last week's episode, you may want to take a listen. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already so that you don't miss a single story and can join in on the discussions. Indie Beginning can also be followed on your favorite social media platform under our title. As we will learn in a moment, Marie found it difficult recording her tale, but also found the comments and reviews so important to her writing career. Each review pushes an author to grow and builds upon the skill set she already has. So last week was the premiere episode of the Indie Beginning podcast, and you had to read your own story. How'd that go?
That was hard. It took an entire day of just reading and rereading and reading again. You never know how your stuff sounds. And most people, or at least I, became an author so I wouldn't have to be vocal.
That's true. I could see that. You're writing because you're not speaking, and then your husband asked you to do a podcast with him. But hey, at least we got a comment. We knew it was going to be slow running in the beginning, but Paul wrote in, there is a lot happening in Chapter 1. We are getting to know Aylin and this strange world. We also have to make sense of why the reaction to her action is not what she expected. I really enjoy how we swap between Aylin's thoughts and the descriptions of the world. Rusting trees that wore more red and orange than purple. Painted a very vivid picture in my mind, as do the elements that are not yet fully described. There's some great wordplay here too. Ice I had to look twice? Wiping away snow sounds like wiping your dinner plate to the fishes down below. I love the rhyme and rhythm in these phrases. I think you really get an understanding of how Aylin thinks in this first chapter. Finally, I always felt ACN feels like Aylin is relating her tale in person, and that really comes across in Marie's reading of Chapter 1.
No, I liked Paul's comment, and I work really, really hard on getting wordplay in there. I love finding ways that people can relate in description. So like the rhyme, ice had to look twice. It kind of makes it stick out in your head. And wiping away snow sounds like wiping your dinner plate to the fishies down below. That's just how I talk.
So when we started this podcast, we knew it would be a few weeks before we got comments. Luckily, we did get one the first week, and that was Paul's. So why don't we share a couple from some like Amazon or Google that you enjoyed?
How about Amazon and Goodreads?
Or those two. I like Amazon and Goodreads too.
Okay, this one came from Kelly. If this is how Marie Camer-Franke, the author, thinks and talks, then she's my new BFF. The book was simple in plot and scenarios, and a lot of the same things we all have read before. But the way this author grabs you is in the way she interacts with the reader. I've never been called out by a book character before.
I have to agree with her. When I read it, I had never... there's been first-person stories before, but this book literally is talking to you. Like, you feel like the person is right next to you when you're speaking. I was amazed by that.
And that's how I wrote it. I wrote it as if you were sitting in front of me, and we were just having a conversation.
No, I thought you did a great job.
And then this one came from Angela. The way the main character talks to the reader is new. She completely pulls you into her world and keeps you turning page after page. It's not so sci-fi that anyone can enjoy it, and even with the weird page numbering, I've shared it with friends who don't care for sci-fi at all.
Again, she has the way you wrote that down. It's just like another person's right there with you. But there was another part to Angela's comment, if I remember correctly, something about the pages.
Yep. I bought this for Kindle and found the page numbering to be a little off-putting. Thinking that it went along with the story, I didn't let it bother me. It doesn't go with anything. The story itself is slow, but hang in there. By chapter 7, you'll be hooked. So what she's talking about is the Kindle numbering. So when you go on at least CreateSpace, the way that I do it, when CreateSpace takes you from a paper book to a Kindle version of the book, your paper book might be 387 pages, but your Kindle version will be thousands of pages, and none of them are in sequence.
That's right. So, it's not really the author's fault, but it is something to go back and look at while editing to see if there is a way to fix it. Speaking of editing, I do remember one review, I believe it was on Amazon, from a woman named Carmilla. She had really nice things to say about it, but one little small paragraph she wrote was, "This was a difficult book to review, because almost all of its issues are due to grammar and spelling. The book needs an editor's touch. While no book is error-free, this one is riddled. Possessive apostrophes are missing. There, all spelled different in the comment, and your, are used as if completely interchangeable. Often homophones are used rather than the correct words. It does make it difficult to understand at times, and while this feels less important as the book progresses, it doesn't become any less frustrating."
And that was really important. That was something that you shouldn't sacrifice, but I kind of did for cost-wise. I didn't want to go broke or take out loans or whatever to afford an editor. So I relied on family and friends to do that. And as the writer, until Carmela had pointed out some of these, in my mind when I read it, my mind changed it so that it was correct, even though it's still written wrong. There's also a part in the book where instead of writing closest, I write closets. And my mind keeps switching it, so it never got corrected.
Yeah, this topic brings me to my top 2 indie author editing dilemmas. One being cost, and the other being self-editing because of cost. Right now, if you go online, you can find copy editing proofreading from like 1 cent a word to 2 cents a word, depending on what you want. But it can go up to as much as $85 an hour. I mean, we're talking thousands of dollars, and if you're going without a publisher, as indie authors do, and agents, I mean, thousands of dollars, it's just thousands of dollars you don't have. You're already working, and you're sacrificing hours at work so that you could get your art created. You're excited to get your work out there, but you don't have the money. And after years of trying to publish mainstream, quotes in the air, you decide to go indie. Here's where investing in yourself comes into play. And that's what it is. You're investing in yourself, your work. You're not simply paying a fee to an editor. Take on a second seasonal job. Start a GoFundMe campaign. Ask somebody for a loan.
Another option is to put financials in the beginning. From stage 1 where you decide to write a book, start setting aside money until you're ready for that editor. Then hopefully you've compiled enough to pay for that editor.
Yeah, so pre-plan your editing right from day 1.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is you decide to do will only help make your story better. That will only help you see a return on your investment. And as for self-editing, you always want to send it to somebody, even before an editor. Just get somebody you trust to see what they think. But you cannot rely on the friends and family plan. This is where you ask Uncle Bob to read your story and let you know what he thought. Of course he loved it because he loves you. You could do no wrong with Uncle Bob. But what about your best friend Stacy? She had the same thought. It's the same trap. Stacy's afraid to hurt your feelings and wants to be encouraging. She does not edit professionally and therefore does not know how to go about steering you and your work down the proper path. And then there's the self-edit. You already know what you wrote. You know the words, you know the meaning, you know the entire story. You know the character, his best friend, his best friend's friend, and his best friend's friend's history too. It's all in there. Truthfully, it is all there in the story you wrote. But some of it may have missed the keyboard or the notepad. Every author needs a fresh, unattached set of eyes to view their work, because that is the work your fans will read. Purchase your copy of A Charming Nightmare at Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, or wherever you prefer to purchase your books. This episode was brought to you by our friends over at Burial Grounds Coffee Company. All reviews were taken from either Amazon, Goodreads, or one of our podcast pages. Head there to read them in full. Music found on this episode was written and performed by Jason Shaw. I am your host, Benjamin Frankie, asking everyone to read more books, be the best possible you, and to simply enjoy this wonderful life. Thanks for listening.